Hey folks, Dr. Santoni here. It is Thursday evening, and I have just spent a lot of hours going through all of the work that you've given to me so far on discussion board and submitted through assignments. And you're all working very hard, so I wanted to give you the same type of time and attention that you're giving me. So because of that, I've decided that I'm going to supply a rubric for each of you, which you should have either by the end of the day tomorrow, or realistically, some will probably sprinkle in throughout the weekend. I'm realizing that I am biting off like huge chunks. And there are a lot of you, and you all make such amazing points. So I just want to make sure that I'm giving you good feedback, and that we're progressing, and that you're getting out of the class what you're putting into it. So I should have a progress report, rubric report for you here in the next couple of days that'll help you gauge how you're doing. However, those of you who are participating I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the class, and I want to thank you for the work that you're putting into it. A few things that I wrote down when I'm wearing my glasses and why I keep looking down. I wanted to make sure that I addressed a few things that came up in Module 1 in detail through a video chat. The first are with the body composition measurements. So with body comp, we looked at skin fold measurements, weight, height, and girth. And I want to take a minute to talk about skin fold measurements and in general this two-compartment model of assessment where we're considering fat-free mass and fat mass and comparing it and the value of that and when it's appropriate to use. There is more information available to us that suggests that a two-compartment model is a more effective tool when you're looking at maintaining lean mass or increasing lean mass. And that using the two-compartment model as a means to look at a decrease in body fat is probably less valid. So there's new technology available that looks at fat mass and fat-free mass where that is not the case. And really the most cutting-edge assessment for body fat is really DEXA scan. And a lot of weight loss clinics, universities are starting to incorporate DEXA scan into their body composition evaluation model. And it's super cool. I'm going to take a note right now to actually upload a video for a DEXA scan for you. But the DEXA seems to show some efficacy in looking at decreasing body fat. But outside of that, a couple of you mentioned hydrostatic weighing, which really was the gold standard. It really isn't anymore. DEXA scanning seems to have surpassed hydrostatic weighing. We do have a hydrostatic weighing tank at McDaniel. And if any of you want to reach out to me and come in and see the tank, we can arrange that. Let me know. In addition, if any of you are really compelled to get involved with weight loss, or that like you're like, I really want to be on top of the most cutting edge technology. If you're in the Mid-Atlantic region, I have some colleagues actually that use a DEXA, and I might be able to arrange a visit for you. So just reach out and let me know if that's something you'd like to do. But when we're using skin fold as a measurement, which is really the most accessible and it transports the best, like you can't carry a DEXA scan in your backpack. The skin fold measurements really are the most helpful when we're just looking to maintain lean mass. So frankly, with personal training, in my career as a personal trainer, by the time I'd been a trainer for 4 years, I kind of threw it out as a tool. It just doesn't provide the type of information that I needed for the clients that I was working with. And if you're working with clients that are like really obese, it doesn't work. They don't work. So if you want to work with an athletic population, you're doing athletic training, then you would use it. It's something you might use, especially if you're working with female athletes. Um, in examining the female athlete triad and just making sure that your athletes aren't losing lean tissue through practice. Okay, I could go on and on about this, so I need to move on. In terms of BMI, so BMI is where you're looking at weight and height, and a few of you made a great point, and it's absolutely true, that unlike skin fold measurements, BMI is not a great measurement for people who are athletic. The reason being is that if you're muscular for your frame, if you have a lot of lean mass for your frame, then the BMI may miscategorize you as being obese when in fact you're not at all obese, you're just very muscular. However, for a normal population, BMI is a fantastic assessment. And most of the people in personal training, since this is a personal training class, most of the individuals you're going to come across are a normal population. So the normative data that we have available using BMI would be very useful for you in showing someone how they compare to the rest of the world. So when dealing with a normal population, I would highly recommend BMI, whereas an athletic population, I would not. I wouldn't even use it as a tool. And skinfold is the opposite. Okay. With girth measurements, however, girth measurements are kind of something that you don't really, they're not flashy. It's a tape measure. I would highly recommend purchasing a weighted tape measure if this is something you see yourself doing in your career. Because when you're working with somebody for weight loss, if you're also doing resistance training, I hope you understand that there is this balance where, you could be gaining lean mass while losing body fat. Now, some physiologists say you can't really do that. They say you got to lose weight and then gain mass. However, you can do it simultaneously. So what can happen is that you get onto the scale and the weight doesn't reflect the size loss. Muscle mass is a lot more dense than fat mass. So you could be a lot smaller and weigh the same. But, who cares if you're, you start a routine, you weigh in at 120 pounds and you're a size 6, and, 4 weeks later, you're still 120 pounds, but you're a size 0. You would look remarkably different. So girth measurements are a really detailed way to show that size loss. And when you're gaining mass, your pennate muscles might hypertrophy more. So it actually your body might actually look different. You might have a great loss in the waist, and a great not as much of a size loss in the quadricep because it's just a larger area. You can get larger, but it overall a size shrinking, but your body has changed. So girth measurements are something that with weight loss or even with mass gain, girth measurements are something that I would always recommend taking. And the question came up, I asked, why would you take girth measurements? Understand, though, that girth measurements are not a 2-compartment model. So they're not telling you if your ratio has changed. There are obvious things, like if you have lost size, your girth measurements have gone down, but your weight has stayed the same. There are certain assumptions we can make, but we don't know for sure. So the answer to what is the value of girth measurements is that they're showing an actual decrease in size. which, is what most people associate with weight loss, is a decrease in size. And it can be site specific. You can look at different areas and size change in different areas. So it's a fantastic measure. And the tool, again, is very affordable. And unlike a DEXA scan, something you can throw in your backpack. Okay, so let's move on. Deborah brought up, thank you, Deborah. Deborah brought up a really, really great point with the functional capacity test. There was a lot of dialogue around the functional capacity testing and is it really valid and what are we really doing? And, I'm working with these super fit people and they're doing the Rockport 1 mile walk and their heart rate doesn't seem to be responding appropriately. And all of these are fantastic observations. I want to take a moment to discuss this idea of validity and accuracy that Deborah brought up. And what I would say is that none of the testing that we have available to us in the field is very accurate. Now, that was a very big statement, depending on what you're looking for, right? So if I'm looking for how strong my shoulder is doing a bench press and I want to do a strength test of a bench press, that's fairly accurate because I can do a bench press and I can move weight. And so that's like a direct measurement. That would be very accurate. But whenever you're doing a test that has an equation, it means that it's based on something else. The reason the equation is there is it's including some type of normative data that's been pulled away from something else that's getting closer and closer to what you're actually measuring. So with a functional capacity test or doing a real VO2 test, what you would be measuring is oxygen consumption. So you're doing a VO2 test when you have a mask on your face and you're looking at something called your respiratory quotient and you're looking at how hard you're working and your heart rate to get an idea of the demand at the muscular level, and then you're actually measuring how much oxygen you're using for different workloads. So a real VO2 test, the question came up, what is a real VO2 test? You'd be using a metabolic cart and it would be measuring the amount of oxygen you're consuming and the amount of carbon dioxide you're exhaling, and it compares it. And then that is directly related to how much work is happening within your entire body for the activity that you're measuring. So that would be when you're actually measuring VO2, that's a fairly accurate assessment. But any of these other tests that we have, including the Astran test that someone uploaded, and even if you look in your book, you guys, there are a number of functional capacity tests. Field tests that are the most commonly used, just because they're the easiest to execute, are the Rockport 1 mile walk test, the 12-minute test, and the 1.5 mile walk run test. And that's just because you don't have to take heart rate in stages. You can do it with groups of people. And it's short term. It happens very quickly. So what's the validity of this? What I would tell you is that they're not very accurate. You're absolutely right that they're not very accurate. So who cares and why would we use them? Well, we really are talking, this is a personal training class, and we're really talking about improving someone's fitness and their own personal journey in fitness. So where you're doing one test and comparing it to normative data, I would say, that might not be so useful with the VO2 test when you're doing field testing. I agree. Who cares? You might not be getting very accurate information. There's a lot of variability. And so it's like, well, what's, at that point, like why are we doing it? Well, there is a reason to do it. And the reason to do it is that if you assess somebody, and it's you assessing them, and it's a formulaic approach with steps that you can easily reproduce, and in 4 to 6 weeks you assess that person again, if you've done a good job with your training session, what you can see is that person's improvement. And that can be extremely motivating. And that is when that information becomes extremely valid. So, the way that you improve the accuracy of that, and in improving the accuracy, you're comparing a person to themselves so that they can see how they've improved. And then you're measuring them twice, once before you start, once when you're nearing the end or when you think they've improved, and you're doing the test in a very similar fashion both times so that you can say, we did this test, this Rockport 1 mile walk test. It's easy to execute. We use the same treadmill. I use the same equipment, or we did it on the same track. I know the grade is exactly the same type of weather, same type of environmental conditions, whatever. It's similar as you can both times. Then you can really show this person how much they've improved throughout your exercise program. So thank you for bringing that up. And then I listed in discussion board, but also so you guys know, those other tests are listed on page 277 of the 4th edition in the Essentials text. So if you have somebody who's just having a difficult time doing the Rockport 1 mile walk, a lot of people have a hard time doing that on the treadmill. It's easier outside. Then go ahead and default to one of the other two. And like I said, the standard operating procedure for those is on page 277 of your Essentials text. Okay, so another point that Erin actually brought up, sorry, like I said, I'm reading my notes. Erin brought up a point about why are there multiple resources for normative data? And that's a great point. So again, here we have, different resources. Make sure that when you're looking at a resource for normative data, like the YMCA has produced some normative data for VO2 testing, but that's really done on the Monarch cycle. So when you're looking and trying to gain resources to compare people to other people, which again, I don't necessarily recommend with these tests, comparing somebody to themselves, then you don't need normative data. But if you're looking for normative data, just make sure that the test that they're looking at and what they're, how they tested their people over time is the, same test that you're using. And generally speaking, that data is not cross-referenceable. So you would not want to utilize normative data from a Monarch cycle study or Monarch cycle normative data set versus a Rockport walking set. You would want, if you're doing a Rockport walk test, you'd want to look at Rockport data. Okay, and then finally, I forgot something. The thigh measurement. So different people, and it's not necessarily people who are more fit. It could be people who actually have like more subcutaneous fat or just distributed like more tightly. So it's just hard to pinch the thigh. And I agree, like a lot of times it's like, ouch, that hurts. So first recommendation would be to make sure that you're actually measuring halfway from the inguinal crease to the top of the patella. You'll find that if you're eyeballing it, the measurement might be a little bit low, and that part, it might be a little bit more difficult to pinch. In addition, when you're taking a pinch, always use 2 fingers and a thumb. Do not pinch using 1 finger and a thumb. That's more painful. And when you're taking the pinch and putting the caliper on, make sure that you don't let go of the pinch when you put the caliper on. So if you look at the details of the procedure, you want to pinch, put the caliper on, and hold the pinch. And that's why you need to kind of have that flow down quickly, so that you're not like squeezing the fat out while you're taking the measurement. But that thigh measurement, as well as the calf measurement, can be painful. So don't think about digging in a pinch. Kind of think about like kneading dough, like 2-finger pinch with the thumb. And make sure you're measuring so that you're in the right spot. Okay, now back to what I was going to say before. We say a lot about, a lot of you, I asked, why do you do a VO2 test? And a lot of people said, well, what I heard a lot was that, well, we're going to take this test so that we know a good starting point. And, you know, what I kept feeling myself want to ask you is, what does that mean? When you do a VO2 test and someone performs well, what does that mean about a starting point? Does that mean that it gives you additional information than if you had just done a talk test with somebody when they're doing cardio? I don't think, if you think about it logically, I don't actually think that any of these measurements, and I would encourage you to agree with me. Sorry, it's so obnoxious, but it's true. But do any of these tests really give you a starting point? For example, if you're doing a bench press, a wide grip bench press on a like a Cybex Eagle machine, so a selectorized piece of equipment, and on that press, that person can move the 100 plate on the press. Does that then mean that you would take them over to a free weight and put 100 pounds, or I'm sorry, the bar weighs 45, so 55 pounds on a bar, and expect that because they could move 100 pounds using a machine, that they could that they could move 100 pounds on free weights? Hopefully, all of you right now are thinking like, no, that doesn't mean that at all. And a lot of what we do in personal training is trial and error. We all know that if you're tired and you're going into the gym to do a workout, you might not perform at a level that you would say you've gotten a full night's sleep. Does that mean you're weaker that day? Does that mean that you've suddenly lost muscular strength? I mean, the answer is yes, it does mean that you're weaker that day. You probably haven't lost muscle mass. So there are a lot of factors that impact our ability to move weight or perform cardio in the gym. And so a lot of these measurements, they don't necessarily give us a good starting point, unless somebody is like, you think somebody is so weak and you do these tests and they just completely blow your mind, then I'd be like, well, yeah, I mean, but that's only because they changed your mind. It's not that this number it means anything to you. So the question I asked about like, why would we take this? What information does this give us? Really takes me back to where we were at the beginning of this very, very long video presentation. And that is the validity of the test. These assessments become extremely valuable, not when we do them once, but when we use them for reassessment. They're extremely valuable in telling us how someone has progressed over their time with us. As standalone measurements outside of blood pressure and heart rate, because those are, you're looking at exactly what you're measuring. Heart rate is heart rate, blood pressure is blood pressure. Okay, you can compare those to everybody in the world. But all of these other tests, the functional capacity test, the body fat test, the girth test, strength testing, muscular endurance testing, become valuable when you're reassessing someone and showing improvement. So I want to thank you all again. I feel excited after getting through your material. Like I said, I'm already through. I think I said it, but I don't know. I've been talking for a long time. I will be through module 2 this evening. The comments this evening. Module 3 will be available tomorrow. If for any of you who want to get started on that, it's available tomorrow. And again, thank you. You guys know how to get in touch with me. If you want to go see a DEXA, let me know. If you want to come meet me in the lab at McDaniel, let me know. You have my email, you have my phone number, and you're doing a great job. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of your Thursday evening, a great weekend, and you'll be hearing from me as the night progresses tomorrow. So thanks again, and good night.